A Miramar warehouse that was the site of a big New Year's Eve party is apparently no stranger to parties during the pandemic. You're going to hear from a neighboring business owner who says this is an ongoing problem.
And California's minimum wage is now $14 an hour. We explain why the raise will help some, but it could hurt others.
Plus, today is the first day for many new laws, how they will directly impact you.
ABC 10 News at 5 starts now.
San Diego County is kicking off the new year with a record-shattering number of COVID-19 cases. Good evening. I'm Kimberly Hunt.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Lindsay Pena has the night off tonight. This afternoon, the county reported almost 4,500 new cases. That is the highest number of cases reported in a single day since the start of the pandemic. That brings our total to more than 160,000. And there were 58 new deaths reported, bringing that total to just under 1,600. But that surge has not stopped people from gathering in large numbers. In fact, just last night, a stage collapsed in a Miramar warehouse where a New Year's Eve party was being held. That injured at least 3 people. Our ABC 10 News reporter Mimi Alcala has the concerns from a neighboring business.
The party was going on here. There's an illegally built mezzanine. It was overweighted with too many people, collapsed.
A stay-at-home order for the Southern California region and warnings of stricter enforcement of the public health order didn't stop some people from partying this New Year's Eve. A large party in a warehouse on Trade Street in Miramar came to a halt when 3 people were hurt as the stage collapsed.
Not only people that were on the mezzanine, but people that were underneath the mezzanine were injured.
San Diego Fire Rescue Battalion Chief Jeff Mitchell says all 3 people were transported with mild injuries.
Oh my God, that hurts.
The parties have become a nuisance for some other business owners in the building.
This tenant has been here a year and change and holding his parties.
Sydney Rosen owns City Signs, the business right next door.
There's always trash from their parties and empty bottles and gloves and masks nowadays and things like that during COVID. I'm 7574 Suite A and they are Suite B, but when they do their advertising, they just advertise as 7574. So often people come and try and open up our front door to try and come in to think that there's a party or a gathering at our place.
Frustration as COVID-19 cases continue to surge across the county and a record number of 62 deaths reported in a single day just on Thursday.
This is severe. COVID is a major problem, and to people to hold parties and not listen to what the government and what is being told to them to do and to take caution and not hold parties and things like that, not hold gatherings, is just unnecessary.
Mimi Alcala, ABC 10 News.
We also reached out to the company that appears to be behind the party, but we've not yet heard back from the owner. We also called San Diego Police to see if anyone has been called or cited and held accountable. We are now waiting to hear back.
FEMA has deployed about 75 military medical workers to California to help with the surge in COVID-19 cases. The team includes doctors and nurses from Travis Air Base and Fort Carson. They'll go to 4 different hospitals in Stockton, Fresno, Lodi, and Colton. And this comes after the state reported today a record 585 coronavirus deaths in a single day. Yesterday, California became the 3rd state to exceed 25,000 deaths since the start of the pandemic. And the U.S. is ushering in a new year with no relief in sight to the pandemic. We've now surpassed 20 million confirmed cases across the nation. And as ABC's Faith Abubey reports, in some places, ambulances are waiting hours for hospital beds to open up.
A new year begins with doctors searching for new spaces for COVID patients. As cases surge, North Carolina and Georgia now building emergency field hospitals for the influx of the seriously ill.
These supplies can get very tight when you think about ventilators, PPE supplies. We did not want to run into that issue again.
Alabama also warning of shortages.
If you have a heart attack and you come to the hospital, we now have no place to put you.
California nearing a breaking point. LA County shattering its own record Thursday, reporting 290 new deaths. Officials there saying every 10 minutes a COVID patient dies. An increasing number have no underlying health conditions.
We are out of our capacity. We're creating spaces from nowhere.
And now a 3rd state, Florida, reporting the possibly more contagious variant of the coronavirus. It couldn't come at a worse time. According to Johns Hopkins University, the U.S. now surpassing 20 million confirmed cases. But Texas ringing in the new year with the governor on Twitter telling restaurants to ignore New Year's Eve pandemic curfews. And actor Kirk Cameron seen with a large group defying state orders again. Healthcare workers running on empty.
It's like treading water from 100 feet below the surface. You're already drowning, but you just have to keep trying because that's what you can do.
President-elect Joe Biden thanking frontline workers for their sacrifice.
They risked their lives. They've done so much for us, and we owe them, we owe them, we owe them.
Biden is also encouraging people to take the vaccine, but the rollout, though, going slower than expected. In a new statement, Senator Mitt Romney sharply criticizing the Trump administration, saying the lack of a federal vaccination plan is, quote, inexcusable. Faith Abube, ABC News, Washington.
And you can keep up with any developments surrounding the coronavirus by downloading our free mobile app. Just go to the App Store and search 10 News.
The minimum wage across California increased by $1 per hour today. Most employers in our region will now have to pay at least $14 per hour. Our ABC 10 News reporter John Horn explains why the raise will help some, but it could hurt others.
The extra $1 per hour will help some San Diegans make the rent or put food on the table. But some of the businesses who have to pay these wages say the increase couldn't have come at a worse time.
There's a lot of ground to make up. There's a lot of loss that's happened, and it's not over.
Cesar Vallon is still trying to get Little Italy's Cloak and Petal through the coronavirus shutdown. It's no longer the upscale full-service restaurant that opened 3 years ago.
We went high-end and, all these like dishes with like fire in them and all kinds of stuff.
Instead, Cloak and Petal is making permanent its recent shift to fast casual order at the counter with just one server and one manager on at the time. The restaurant can eliminate 2 to 3 staff members per shift as minimum wage increases from $13 to $14 per hour.
The ticket prices are the same. The tips are even higher. And the labor is dropping down.
California's minimum wage has increased every year since 2017 as it makes its way to $15 an hour next year. Despite the employment concerns, University of San Diego economist Alan Jin says the benefits outweigh the costs.
It puts more spending power then into the hands of people, and people at that end who are making the minimum wage will go out and virtually spend all of their money.
Vallon says he supports minimum wage increases, but has to balance that with the ability to survive. John Horn, ABC 10 News.
All employers in the city of San Diego must now pay at least $14 per hour to their employees. Statewide, that rate also applies to employers with more than 25 workers. Smaller employers must pay at least $13 an hour.
And with the start of the new year comes a new set of laws. Many of them directly impact the criminal justice system and police reform. ABC 10 News reporter Adam Rakusin breaks down the changes that start today.
No justice, no peace. In 2020, social justice movements took center stage. Demonstrations drew thousands in cities across the country after the death of George Floyd. George Floyd! Protesters demanding police reform. I can't breathe! Law enforcement agencies across San Diego County responded by dropping the controversial use of force technique known as the carotid restraint. Now, a state law begins banning carotid restraints, including chokeholds.
It's objectively a better scenario with the law.
Thomas Hinsa is a San Diego commissioner with the People's Alliance for Justice.
We have to take it from a position of what can we do to ensure that the least amount of harm comes to people. And this is a good first start.
Bishop Cornelius Bowser applauds the law, but hopes lawmakers continue to focus on de-escalation.
Let's get to the place to where that we don't even have to do that, where we're de-escalating, right? Where you don't have to point a gun at someone. You don't have to use a taser on someone.
Another new law starting in January relates to inmate firefighters. Assembly Bill 2147 allows inmates from the state's inmate firefighter program to become firefighters after completing their prison time.
This bill will give those prisoners hope of actually getting a job in the profession that they've been trained.
Speaking of fires, a new law requires homeowners who live in fire-prone areas to create more intense fuel reduction between 5 and 30 feet around their home, in addition to the already required 100 feet of defensible space on each side. And for those on the road, the next time you see flashing lights, remember this. A new law extends penalties for not moving over or slowing down for emergency vehicles, with flashing lights on freeways to local streets and roads. Adam Rakusin, ABC 10 News.
This morning, Congress overrode President Trump's veto of the National Defense Authorization Act. This is the first for lawmakers since the president took office nearly 4 years ago. Trump rejected that $740 billion bill last week, saying it failed to limit social media companies he claimed were biased against him during his re-election campaign. He also opposed language that allows for the renaming of military bases that currently honor Confederate leaders. A new year will also bring a new president. In just 20 days, the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden will take place in Washington. But as our Scripps political correspondent Joe St. George explains, because of the pandemic, it will be very different from any inauguration we've seen before.
The platform outside the United States Capitol is nearly finished. Press risers have been put up. Fresh paint was applied earlier this week.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
But because of this pandemic, President-elect Biden's inauguration will be very different from his first one as vice president back in 2009. Inauguration change number one, President-elect Biden telling supporters not to come. While some will no doubt still flock to the National Mall, it will likely be very sparse. No crowd records will be broken this time around. Inauguration change number two, members of Congress have limited tickets. Usually the area surrounding the Capitol is filled by those with official invites. In previous years, members of Congress distributed hundreds of thousands of formal invitations. This year, each member gets to invite a +1. Inauguration change number three, no lunch inside the Capitol. In a normal year after the swearing in, the new president dines with members of Congress. That event is now canceled. Inauguration change number four, inaugural parade and inaugural balls being reconfigured.
I do think that they'll continue to try to engage with people virtually.
Rachel Gloss is a Washington, D.C. based event planner. She says in a normal year, she'd coordinate a half dozen inaugural galas and balls. This year, for obvious reasons, her usual clients have canceled the cocktails.
Right now, we don't have anything on deck.
And finally, inauguration change number five is the one most up in the air. What role will President Trump have? The morning he took office 4 years ago, the Obamas greeted President Trump at the White House. Obama attended his swearing in. Biden inaugural committee co-chair, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester.
At this point, I'm not sure what President Trump will want to do on that day. It would be unfortunate if he chooses not to participate, but I will tell you that the committee itself are working to ensure that people across the country can participate.
Of course, one thing is for sure, when the sun rises over the U.S. Capitol on January 20th, 2021, it will be an inauguration unlike any other. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
A local family mourning the loss of their husband and father after he contracted COVID-19.
He's just not here anymore.
How a family gathering he did not attend may have played a role in his untimely death. And how a unique community kitchen in Oceanside is helping restaurants that are struggling during the pandemic. Plus.
And yeah, out she came at 12:05.
A baby girl narrowly avoids being born in 2020. We'll introduce you to the San Diego girl who was the first to be born at Sharp Mary Birch's Hospital in 2021. ABC 10 News is back in 90 seconds.